Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a text that is just absolutely fascinating. We're looking at the first 34 chapters of 2nd Chronicles. Now, if you've ever thought of ancient texts as, just dry lists of unpronounceable names and boring dates, well, prepare to be surprised. What we actually have on our hands here is an epic, generational roller coaster of human behavior. It's literally a masterclass in cause and effect history. We're going to watch a nation hit the absolute pinnacle of wealth and wisdom, only to completely fracture and plunge into this wild, centuries-long cycle of triumph and disaster. It's dramatic, it's incredibly structured, and honestly, it tells us a whole lot about human nature.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap so we don't get lost in all the history. We're covering 1. Solomon's Golden Age, 2. The Kingdom Divided, 3. The Pendulum of Kings, 4. Hezekiah and the Siege, and finally, 5. Josiah's Great Discovery.
Act 1. Solomon's Golden Age. We're kicking things off right at the very baseline of this era's peak, starting with King Solomon being granted unprecedented wisdom and wealth by God.
Now, to really grasp this era, you have to understand its literal center of gravity. Solomon's defining achievement, without a doubt, is the construction of the temple. According to the text, this isn't just some beautiful piece of architecture. It is the absolute focal point of the entire nation's identity, their prosperity, and their connection to God. We're talking about a massive, magnificent sanctuary in Jerusalem built specifically for the name of the Lord. It housed the sacred Ark of the Covenant, and when it was dedicated, the text says the glory of the Lord filled the place in a cloud so incredibly thick that the priests couldn't even stand to do their jobs.
And to put the sheer, mind-boggling scale of the prosperity that followed into perspective, the text anchors us in historical reality with some highly specific numbers. Try 666 talents of gold rolling in every single year. He also had 4,000 stalls just for his horses and chariots. In fact, the text literally notes that silver was considered kind of worthless in Solomon's day. It became as common in Jerusalem as stones. Can you even imagine that? It's a level of opulence that's honestly hard to wrap your head around.
Naturally, this staggering wealth and wisdom didn't just stay local. It made international headlines. Foreign royalty were traveling vast distances just to see if the rumors were actually true. When the Queen of Sheba rolls into town with this massive caravan of spices and gold to test Solomon with hard questions, she is completely blown away. She admits, indeed, not even half the greatness of your wisdom was told me. You have far exceeded the report I heard. This right here, this is the absolute peak. It's the Golden Age, right before the inevitable fracture.
Act 2. The Kingdom Divided. Because, well, nothing lasts forever. After a 40-year reign, Solomon dies, and one single negotiation with his son Rehoboam changes absolutely everything.
Here's what happens. The people go to the new king, Rehoboam, and basically beg him to lighten the incredibly heavy forced labor that his father had imposed on them. So, Rehoboam looks for advice. First, he asks the elders who served his dad, and they give him the wise approach. Be kind to these people, please them, and they'll be your loyal servants forever. But Rehoboam, he actually rejects that. He goes to the young guys he grew up with, his buddies, and they give him the exact opposite advice. They tell him to double down on intimidation. Disastrously, he listens to them. He actually goes back to the people and tells them, "My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions." Yikes.
The immediate consequence of that massive hubris is totally catastrophic. The nation just completely fractures, 10 of the tribes immediately rebel, they assassinate the guy in charge of forced labor, and they break off to form their own northern kingdom of Israel. Rehoboam is left ruling only the southern tribes of Judah and Benjamin. In literally one bad conversation, the Golden Age is shattered, and the stage is perfectly set for the deeply divided history that makes up the rest of the text.
Act 3. The Pendulum of Kings. With the kingdom now divided, we're going to watch a long succession of kings operating under a very specific framework.
To make any sense of the next few hundred years of history, you have to understand the text's incredibly neutral, cyclical formula. The author judges every single king strictly against this cause and effect worldview. It goes exactly like this. If a king seeks God and gets rid of idols, the nation gets rest, peace, and military victory. But inevitably, that success leads to the king becoming proud, which immediately triggers disaster. We're talking plagues or invading armies. Finally, if the king or the people humble themselves, God provides deliverance. Over and over again, the pendulum just keeps swinging.
Let's actually look at this pendulum in action with a few specific kings. You've got King Asa, who proactively removes foreign altars and relies on God against a massive army. The result? Decades of peace. Then you've got King Uzziah. He becomes incredibly powerful, but his pride leads him to brazenly walk into the temple to burn incense, which was a job strictly reserved for priests, and boom, leprosy immediately breaks out on his forehead. Then you swing to King Ahaz, who takes the pendulum into total, horrific idolatry, even burning his own sons as sacrifices. That leads to devastating military defeats and thousands of his people being taken captive. You see, their religious loyalty directly and immediately dictated their physical and national survival.
And the text uses these incredibly dramatic, hyper-specific anecdotes to really drive home just how severe the stakes of this cycle are. For instance, when King Jehoram murders his brothers and leads the nation astray, he doesn't just die normally. He's struck with an incurable bowel disease that literally causes his intestines to fall out. Gross but true. Or take the wicked King Ahab. He tries to outsmart a prophecy of his own death by hiding in disguise during a battle. But someone fires a bow completely at random, and the arrow perfectly finds the tiny little gap in Ahab's armor. And during one exceptionally dark period, you have a royal grandmother named Athaliah who tries to murder the entire royal family just to seize power. The only survivor is a tiny baby named Joash, who gets hidden in a temple bedroom for 6 years. I mean, the drama here is absolutely cinematic.
Act 4. Hezekiah and the Siege. The pendulum has swung back to the positive side, but a righteous king is about to face a completely impossible threat.
The massive Assyrian Empire, led by King Sennacherib, is marching straight for Jerusalem. But, as this story brilliantly illustrates, relying on God in this text does not mean just sitting around and hoping for the best. King Hezekiah gets to work with some highly practical, urgent tactical prep. First, he organizes a massive workforce to block all the water springs outside the city, so the besieging army won't have a drop to drink. Second, he desperately rebuilds and reinforces all the broken sections of the city walls. And third, he ramps up the manufacturing of weapons and shields. He is getting the physical defenses perfectly dialed in.
But all that physical prep is paired directly with the formula we just talked about. Sennacherib's officers show up and try to terrorize the locals. They mock their god and point out, quite accurately, that no other nation's gods had saved them from Assyria. But Hezekiah rallies his people with this absolute mic-drop quote: "With him is only the arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles." And according to the text, leaning on that formula absolutely works. Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah cry out in prayer, and an angel miraculously annihilates the entire leadership and fighting force of the Assyrian camp overnight. The siege is completely broken.
Act 5. Josiah's Great Discovery. We fast forward decades later, where an 8-year-old king initiates some massive reforms to a severely neglected temple.
It's during these physical repairs to the temple that one of the most pivotal, shocking moments of the entire era happens. The workers are in there pulling out old money and clearing away centuries of debris, and the high priest Hilkiah stumbles upon something unbelievable: the long-lost Book of the Law, given through Moses. This core foundational text had literally been lost and forgotten within the ruins of their own sanctuary. When the secretary brings this ancient, dusty scroll to King Josiah and reads it out loud, Josiah is so overwhelmed and distressed by how far they've drifted from it that he physically tears his royal robes.
So, it all leads us to this incredibly provocative question. What happens to a society when it completely forgets its foundational texts? 2 Chronicles uses this whole epic generational pendulum to show us a kingdom deeply struggling to remember who they even are. From the golden wealth of Solomon to the bitter division of Rehoboam, through the roller coaster of pride and humility of dozens of kings, all the way to a young kid discovering a dusty scroll in the ruins, it's a profoundly fascinating look at human behavior and the fragile nature of societal memory. Really leaves you wondering, what foundations have we forgotten today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to dive into the next topic with you. See you there.